The Cursed Doll of Willow Creek. In the quiet, unassuming town of Willow Creek, there existed a small antique shop known as Timeless Treasures. The shop was filled with relics from the past, ornate furniture, vintage jewelry, and curious trinkets. But the most peculiar item in the shop was an old porcelain doll, seated in a glass display case at the back. The doll had piercing blue eyes, a delicate lace dress, and golden curls that framed its porcelain face. It was said to be cursed. The doll had a dark history. According to local legend, it once belonged to a young girl named Lila, who lived in the town over a century ago. Lila's father, a talented but reclusive toymaker, crafted the doll for his beloved daughter. However, tragedy struck when Lila fell gravely ill and died shortly after receiving the doll. Overwhelmed by grief, her father claimed that Lila's spirit had become trapped within the doll. Strange occurrences began to plague the toymaker's house. The doll would move on its own, and at night, whispers could be heard echoing through the halls. The toymaker, driven mad by these events, eventually took his own life. The doll was passed down through generations, with each owner experiencing a series of misfortunes until it finally ended up in the antique shop. One evening, a young woman named Sarah entered Timeless Treasures, searching for a unique gift for her niece's birthday. Her eyes fell upon the porcelain doll, and despite the shop owner's warnings, she purchased it, dismissing the curse as mere superstition. Sarah brought the doll home and placed it on a shelf in her living room. That night, she began to hear soft whispers and faint giggles. She dismissed the sounds as her imagination and went to bed. But the next morning, she found the doll in a different position, facing her bedroom door. Over the following days, the disturbances grew more intense. Objects in Sarah's house would move or go missing, and she could swear the doll's eyes followed her every move. She started to feel a cold presence in her home, and the whispers grew louder, sounding like a child's voice calling out to her. Desperate to rid herself of the doll, Sarah returned to the antique shop, only to find it closed. Panicking, she threw the doll into the trash bin outside her house, hoping to be done with it. That night, she awoke to the sound of footsteps in her hallway. Her heart pounded as she saw the doll standing in her doorway, its blue eyes glowing in the dark. Terrified, Sarah decided to seek help from a local historian who specialized in the paranormal. The historian revealed the doll's cursed history and advised Sarah to perform a ritual to release Lila's spirit. Following his instructions, Sarah gathered the necessary items: a white candle, a piece of Lila's favorite fabric, and a small mirror. As midnight approached, Sarah performed the ritual, reciting the incantation to free Lila's spirit. The air grew cold, and a faint glow surrounded the doll. Suddenly, the whispers ceased, and the doll's eyes dimmed, becoming lifeless. The next morning, Sarah returned the now ordinary doll to the antique shop, relieved to be free of its curse. The shop owner, understanding the doll's history, placed it back in the glass case, where it remained a silent witness to its dark past. From that day on, Sarah never spoke of the doll again. But locals continued to whisper about the cursed doll of Willow Creek, warning others of the malevolent spirit that once inhabited its porcelain form. Subscribe to Trend Nightmare for more scary, horror stories. The Forgotten Asylum. On the outskirts of a small, forgotten town stood an abandoned asylum, its crumbling facade hidden beneath a tangle of overgrown ivy and decaying trees. The Asylum of St. Dymphna had been shut down for decades, its history shrouded in mystery and fear. Locals avoided the place, whispering about the sinister experiments and tortured souls that once resided within its walls. One autumn evening, a group of friends decided to explore the asylum, driven by curiosity and the thrill of uncovering its dark secrets. Among them was Alex, an aspiring filmmaker who saw the asylum as the perfect setting for a horror documentary. Armed with cameras and flashlights, the group ventured into the asylum, unaware of the terror that awaited them. The moment they stepped inside, a chill ran down their spines. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, and the walls seemed to echo with the faint cries of the past. Graffiti covered the peeling paint, and broken furniture lay scattered across the floors. The group navigated through the labyrinthine hallways, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they explored deeper into the asylum, they stumbled upon an old, locked door. Intrigued, Alex picked the lock and pushed the door open, revealing a hidden room filled with dusty medical equipment and faded patient files. In the center of the room stood an old, rusted gurney with leather restraints still attached. One of the friends, Jenna, picked up a patient file and began to read aloud. The file belonged to a patient named Elizabeth, who had been admitted to the asylum in the 1920s. According to the file, Elizabeth suffered from severe hallucinations and was subjected to experimental treatments that only worsened her condition. The notes detailed her gradual descent into madness and the horrific screams that echoed through the asylum at night. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, and the room grew cold. The group's flashlights flickered, and a low, anguished moan filled the air. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Alex's camera captured a shadowy figure moving in the corner of the room, and the moan turned into a blood-curdling scream. Terrified, they tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. Desperation set in as they searched for another way out. Alex's camera continued to capture the unsettling events, a shadow darting across the room, the gurney moving on its own, and whispered voices calling their names. In a frantic attempt to escape, they pried open a window and climbed out, one by one. As they ran through the asylum's courtyard, they heard the screams follow them, growing louder and more frantic. The group didn't stop until they reached the safety of their car, leaving the asylum and its dark secrets behind. Back home, Alex reviewed the footage, hoping to make sense of what they had experienced. The video showed more than they remembered: distorted faces appearing in the shadows, ghostly figures walking the halls, and Elizabeth's tormented spirit reaching out to them. Haunted by their encounter, the group vowed never to return to the asylum. The footage Alex captured was too disturbing to release, and he decided to keep it hidden, afraid of what might happen if the spirits of St. Dymphna were disturbed again. To this day, the asylum of St. Dymphna remains abandoned, its dark past buried beneath layers of dust and decay. But those who dare to approach can still hear the whispers of the forgotten patients, their tortured souls trapped forever within the walls of the forgotten asylum. Subscribe to Trend Nightmare for more scary, horror stories. And like and share your opinion in the comment section.